I returned home to rural Nebraska from my medical deployment in Afghanistan on Christmas Eve. The familiar scent of pine needles and hot cocoa filled my parents' modest farmhouse living room as I embraced my 18-year-old daughter, Madison. My parents, Harold and Patricia, sat nearby along with my sister, Caroline. Over steaming mugs, I casually asked Madison, "Was the $1,400 I sent every month enough to cover everything you needed?" Madison's face went completely blank. "What money, Mom?" The room fell silent. Harold's coffee cup rattled against the saucer. Patricia suddenly busied herself with non-existent kitchen tasks. Caroline immediately started talking about tomorrow's Christmas dinner plans, her voice artificially bright. That evening, after Madison went to bed in the cramped upstairs room, I confronted my family in the dimly lit kitchen. The overhead light cast harsh shadows across their faces as I pulled out my phone and opened my military banking application. "Let me ask this again." I said, my voice steady despite the growing knot in my stomach. "Where did the money go?" Harold shifted uncomfortably in his wooden chair, the same one he'd sat in for 30 years. "Well, Britney, there might be some confusion about those transfers." Patricia wiped her hands on her apron for the third time, avoiding my gaze. "You know how forgetful teenagers can be." Madison probably just doesn't remember. Caroline nodded enthusiastically, her blonde hair catching the light. "Teenagers these days are so scattered. Madison's always been a little spacey, right?" I scrolled through my banking records, the blue glow illuminating months of identical transactions. "According to this, I've been sending $1,400 to Dad's account as Madison's guardian for the past 2 years. Every single month like clockwork." 2 years! Harold's voice cracked. His weathered hands gripped the table edge. "I thought you said it was only since you deployed 12 months ago." The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Patricia's face went ashen while Caroline's enthusiastic nodding stopped abruptly. "That's the first twist," I thought, my heart racing. "They've been stealing from Madison for twice as long as I even knew." I clicked through the detailed transaction history, each entry showing the same pattern: money transferred from my account to Harold's on the 15th of every month. "This shows 24 transfers, not 12. Caroline stood up quickly, knocking her chair backward. "Maybe we should discuss this tomorrow after Christmas dinner. It's late, and everyone's tired from traveling." "Sit down, Caroline." My voice carried the authority I'd learned commanding medical units in combat zones. "We're discussing this now." Harold finally broke. Tears rolled down his cheeks, disappearing into his graying beard. "We borrowed some money for farm expenses. The drought last year hit us hard, and we planned to pay it back before you returned." Borrowed. I pulled up my banking app again, showing them the screen. "This isn't borrowing, Dad. This is every penny I sent for Madison's care." Patricia finally spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "We kept detailed records of what Madison needed. Food, utilities, school supplies. We can show you the receipts." "Then show me." I crossed my arms. "Right now." Harold exchanged glances with Patricia before disappearing into his cluttered office. Through the thin walls, I could hear him opening and closing desk drawers, papers rustling frantically. While we waited, I studied Caroline's appearance more carefully. Her designer handbag sat on the counter, the kind that cost 3 months of military pay. Her leather boots looked fresh from an expensive boutique, and her wool coat was clearly high-end. "Nice jacket," I commented. "Where did you get it?" "Oh, this old thing." Caroline tugged at the sleeves. "I've had it forever." Madison appeared at the bottom of the staircase wearing a threadbare nightgown that I didn't recognize. She looked thinner than when I'd left her cheekbones more pronounced. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. "Mom, is everything okay?" I heard voices. I studied my daughter's appearance with growing alarm. Her pajamas had been mended multiple times, and her slippers had holes near the toes. Madison, honey, have you been getting enough to eat? She glanced nervously at Patricia before answering. Of course, Mom. Grandma takes good care of me. What about school supplies? College applications? Did you get the laptop I arranged to be purchased for your studies? Madison's confused expression told me everything. Laptop, I've been using the computer at the library for schoolwork. Harold returned with a manila folder, his hands shaking slightly. Here are the expense records. I opened the folder to find hastily written receipts on loose paper, obviously created recently. The handwriting was Patricia's, and the dates were inconsistent. Some expenses were listed for days that hadn't occurred yet, and others showed impossible amounts like $3 for monthly groceries. Dad, these are fake. I held up a receipt claiming Madison's monthly food costs were $15. You can't feed a growing teenager on $15 monthly. Patricia exploded her face, turning bright red. How dare you accuse us of lying? We've been raising your daughter while you play soldier halfway around the world. We deserve compensation for the sacrifice we've made. The words hit me like physical blows. Play soldier, I've been serving our country and sending money to ensure my daughter was cared for. Well, Madison's fine, isn't she? Patricia's voice rose with each word. She has a roof over her head and food in her stomach. Maybe if you hadn't abandoned her to chase your military career, you'd know what real parenting costs. Madison flinched at the harsh tone. I noticed her instinctively stepping backward as if preparing to flee. Abandoned. My voice remained calm, but inside I was screaming. I've been working to support her future, sending money for her needs. Caroline jumped back into the conversation, clearly trying to redirect. The important thing is that Madison's healthy and safe. Money isn't everything, right? Military families are supposed to be tough and independent. Madison, did anyone ever tell you that I was sending money for your care? I asked directly. My daughter looked between her grandparents and Aunt uncertainty written across her face. They said you were too busy with important military work to worry about money stuff. Grandma Patricia said you told them not to spoil me because military kids need to be strong and self-reliant. The manipulation was becoming clear. They'd convinced Madison that I had deliberately chosen not to support her financially while simultaneously stealing every penny I sent. Harold suddenly looked up from the fake receipts, his face pale. Britney, there's something else. We might need to ask for additional support for Madison's college expenses. $1,400 a month isn't really enough to cover everything a teenager needs, especially with college coming up. The audacity took my breath away. They were planning to ask me for more money, while Madison had never seen a single dollar of what I'd already sent. I walked to Harold's office and began examining his desk more carefully. In the bottom drawer, underneath old farm equipment manuals, I found a second manila folder. Inside were bank statements for an account I'd never seen before. The account was opened in Madison's name with Harold listed as custodian. They'd been using her identity to build credit, and the statements showed significant debt accumulated over the past year. Madison, did you know you have a bank account? I called to her. No, Mom, I don't have any bank accounts. I returned to the kitchen holding the statements. Then explain these. Harold's face went white as he recognized the papers. Caroline grabbed her purse and coat. I should really get going, early morning tomorrow. Nobody leaves, I said firmly. We're going to figure out exactly what's been happening to my daughter. The next morning, Christmas Day, I asked Madison to take a walk with me around the property while the others prepared breakfast. The December air was crisp, and frost covered the bare cornfields stretching toward the horizon. Madison, I need you to be completely honest with me, I began as we walked along the fence line. What has your life been like while I've been deployed? She was quiet for a long moment, her breath creating small clouds in the cold air. Mom, I don't want to cause trouble for Grandma and Grandpa. You won't cause trouble by telling the truth, I promise. Madison stopped walking and pulled a small worn notebook from her jacket pocket. I've been writing everything down, hoping maybe someday I could tell you about it. She opened the journal to pages covered in her neat handwriting. The entries were dated starting from 2 years ago when I first deployed. January 15th, she read aloud. Mom deployed today. Grandma Patricia said I need to learn to be independent because military families don't rely on handouts. She said Mom specifically told them not to spoil me with money because soldiers' kids need to be tough. I felt sick listening to the lies they'd fed her. February 20th. Madison continued. Grandpa Harold said I need to start contributing to household expenses since I'm eating their food and using their electricity. I got a job at Miller's Diner washing dishes after school. Madison, you were only 16. You should have been focusing on school, not working to pay for basic necessities that I was already covering. She flipped through more pages. March 10th. Skipped lunch again today because Grandma Caroline said eating smaller portions shows respect for soldiers who don't get regular meals. She said you would be proud of me for making sacrifices. The manipulation was even worse than I'd imagined. They'd convinced my daughter that starving herself was somehow honoring my service. May 5th. Applied for 3 scholarships but couldn't afford the application fees. Mrs. Thompson at school offered to waive some costs, but Grandma Patricia said accepting charity would embarrass the family. I had to stop walking. The realization that Madison had been struggling academically because of their greed made me physically ill. Madison, how much weight have you lost? She looked down at her thin frame. Maybe 30 pounds. Grandma Caroline says military families should stay in fighting shape. 30 pounds. My daughter had been slowly starving while my family spent her support money on luxuries. Did anyone ever take you to a doctor? Madison nodded. Dr. Williams at the clinic. I was having anxiety attacks and couldn't sleep. He was really nice and didn't charge me because he said I obviously couldn't afford it. What about insurance? You should have been covered under my military benefits. Grandpa Harold said the paperwork was too complicated and military insurance doesn't work at local clinics. Another lie. Military family insurance works everywhere, and Harold knew it. We walked back toward the house, Madison sharing more entries from her journal. Each page revealed another layer of neglect and manipulation disguised as military family values. As we approached the farmhouse, my phone rang. The caller ID showed Dr. Williams from the local clinic. Miss Turner, this is Dr. Williams. I heard through the community that you're back from deployment. I've been treating Madison for stress-related health issues, and I thought you should know about her condition. I stepped away from Madison to take the call privately. What kind of health issues, Dr.? Anxiety attacks, chronic fatigue, and signs of nutritional deficiency. I've been concerned about her living situation, but Madison insisted her family was taking good care of her. Nutritional deficiency. Her blood work shows consistent undereating and vitamin deficiencies typical of food insecurity. I assumed the family was facing financial hardships, so I provided care without charge. I closed my eyes, fighting back tears. Doctor, I've been sending $1,400 monthly for her care for 2 years. There was silence on the other end of the line. Miss Turner Madison has been coming to the clinic in worn-out clothes, clearly stressed about money for basic necessities. If financial support was being sent, it wasn't reaching her. After ending the call, I found Madison sitting on the porch steps, still holding her journal. Madison, I want you to understand something very clearly. I have been sending $1,400 every single month to ensure you had everything you needed. That money was meant for your food, clothes, school supplies, medical care, and college preparation. She looked up at me with tears in her eyes. But they said you were too busy with important work to worry about money. They said military kids don't get special treatment. That's not true. Every penny I earned went toward making sure you were comfortable and had opportunities for your future. The front door opened and Harold stepped outside. His face was grim, and he moved slowly like a man heading toward his own execution. "Britney, we need to talk." Inside, Patricia was pacing the kitchen while Caroline sat at the table looking pale. The fake receipts were scattered across the surface, and Harold's banking documents were spread out for examination. "I called the bank this morning," Harold announced. "I need to explain something about the account we opened in Madison's name." Madison looked confused. "What account?" "We thought—" Harold began, his voice breaking. "We thought we could improve Madison's credit score by building a history before she turned 18. But the credit card we got in her name, we used it for farm expenses." I pulled out my phone and started recording. "How much debt did you accumulate using my daughter's identity?" Patricia answered from across the room. "About $7,000. But we planned to pay it off before she needed credit for college." $7,000 in credit card debt under my daughter's name. My voice remained steady, but inside I was calculating the damage to Madison's financial future. Caroline finally spoke up. "It wasn't supposed to hurt her. We just needed short-term help, and since the money you were sending was covering Madison's basic needs anyway." "Except the money I sent never reached Madison," I pointed out. "She's been working multiple jobs, skipping meals, and wearing clothes with holes while you spent her support money and destroyed her credit." Harold sat down heavily in his chair. "We told ourselves we were teaching her independence. Military families are supposed to be self-reliant. Dad's self-reliance doesn't mean stealing from your own granddaughter and lying to her about her mother's love and support." Madison had been quiet during this exchange, but now she spoke up. "Grandpa Harold, is it true that Mom was sending money for me?" Harold couldn't meet her eyes. "Yes, Madison, every month for 2 years. Then why was I working double shifts at the diner? Why was I sleeping in the storage room some nights when it was too cold upstairs?" Patricia whirled around. "Because money doesn't grow on trees, and young people need to learn the value of hard work." "But Mom was paying for heat," Madison's voice cracked. "I was cold and hungry while you spent money that was meant for me." The truth was finally coming out, and I could see Madison processing the reality that her suffering had been completely unnecessary. Her grandparents had chosen to make her struggle while living comfortably on money meant for her care. Harold pulled out his cell phone with shaking hands. "Britney, I need to show you something else." He scrolled through his text messages and handed me the phone. The messages were between him and Caroline, dating back months. "Britney doesn't need to know the exact amounts. Madison is learning good values this way. We can pay it back before she finds out. The farm needs the money more than Madison needs luxuries." The premeditation was clear. This wasn't a desperate decision made in crisis. It was a calculated scheme to steal from Madison while making her believe I didn't care enough to support her. I looked at my daughter, who was reading the messages over my shoulder. Tears were streaming down her face as she realized the extent of the deception. "Madison Key," I said gently, "none of this is your fault. I never wanted you to struggle. Every sacrifice I made overseas was to ensure you had security and opportunities." She nodded, wiping her eyes. "I wrote you letters, Mom, lots of letters, but I never sent them because they said you were too busy to read personal mail." "What letters?" Madison ran upstairs and returned with a shoebox full of handwritten letters addressed to me. Some were written on notebook paper, others on scraps. Each one was dated and sealed in an envelope that was never mailed. I opened the most recent one, dated just 2 weeks ago. "Dear Mom, I hope you're safe and not too busy to think about home. I got accepted to community college, but I can't afford the enrollment fee. I've been working extra shifts, but it's not enough. I don't want to ask Grandma and Grandpa for more help because they already do so much for me. I miss you, and I'm proud that you're serving our country. Love, Madison." The letter broke my heart. Madison had been struggling with problems that my monthly payments should have easily solved, writing to a mother she thought was too busy to care, while her grandparents lived comfortably on money meant for her future. Harold was crying now, his weathered hands covering his face. We convinced ourselves we were doing right. Patricia said military families needed to be tough. I looked around the room at my family, seeing them clearly for the first time. Patricia, still defiant and angry, convinced she was the victim. Caroline, scared and guilty, but still looking for ways to minimize her responsibility. Harold, broken and ashamed, but finally facing the truth about what they'd done to Madison. And Madison, my strong, resilient daughter, who had endured years of unnecessary hardship while believing her mother didn't love her enough to provide support. The most painful part wasn't the money they'd stolen. It was the lies they'd told Madison about my love for her, the way they'd convinced her that struggling was somehow noble while they lived comfortably at her expense. Tomorrow I would start making phone calls. But tonight I just wanted to hold my daughter and begin repairing the damage that my own family had done to both of us. The morning after Christmas, I woke up with a clear plan. Madison and I had stayed up late reading through her journal, and the unsent letters and the full scope of my family's betrayal was becoming evident. I decided to confront Caroline first, before she could coordinate her story with my parents. I found her in the barn, supposedly checking on my father's livestock, but obviously trying to avoid the house. She was dressed in yet another expensive outfit, her designer jeans and cashmere sweater standing out starkly against the rural setting. "Caroline, we need to talk," I said, pulling out my phone to start recording. "And I want the truth this time." She turned around, her face flushed from the cold morning air. "Britney, I know you're upset, but you have to understand our perspective." "Your perspective? Explain that to me." Caroline leaned against a fence post, clearly rehearsing her words. "When you left for deployment, Madison became our responsibility. Mom and Dad are getting older, and taking care of a teenager is expensive and exhausting. I was sending money to cover those expenses." "But the money wasn't enough." Caroline's voice rose defensively. "Teenagers need constant attention, driving to activities, help with homework. We were providing emotional support that you couldn't give from overseas." I stepped closer, keeping my phone steady. "So you decided you deserved to be compensated for grandparent duties that my money was already covering?" Caroline's composure cracked slightly. "It was Mom's idea originally. She said you owed us for stepping in when you chose your career over your daughter. I chose to serve my country while ensuring Madison was financially supported. There's a difference." "Well, Mom convinced us that military children shouldn't expect handouts anyway. She said you would want Madison to learn independence and self-reliance." The manipulation was becoming clearer. Patricia had convinced Caroline that stealing from Madison was somehow beneficial for her character development. Caroline Madison was working double shifts at 16 skipping meals and sleeping in unheated rooms while you wore designer clothes. How is that teaching independence? Caroline's face went pale. "We didn't know she was sleeping in the storage room." "You didn't know because you didn't care enough to check." As Caroline struggled to respond, an elderly woman approached us from the neighboring property. I recognized Mrs. Anderson, who had lived next door to my parents for decades. "Britney Turner, is that you?" she called out warmly. "I heard you were back from overseas." I walked over to greet her, grateful for a friendly face after days of family confrontation. "Mrs. Anderson, it's good to see you." She hugged me tightly, then lowered her voice. "Honey, I don't want to speak out of turn, but I've been worried about Madison for months." "Worried how?" Mrs. Anderson glanced toward Caroline, who was clearly listening, then continued. "I've seen that girl walking to work in worn-out shoes, even in snow. When I asked Patricia about it, she said you were too selfish to send proper support, and they were doing their best with limited resources. The lies extended beyond my immediate family." Patricia had been actively spreading false information about me throughout the community while living off the money I sent for Madison. "Mrs. Anderson, I've been sending $1,400 monthly for Madison's care." Her jaw dropped. $1,400 every month. Honey, Patricia told everyone in town that you barely sent enough for basic groceries. She said military families don't believe in supporting children because it builds character. Caroline interrupted loudly. "Mrs. Anderson, this is a private family matter." The older woman looked at Caroline sternly. "Young lady, when a child is suffering in our community, it becomes everyone's concern. Madison has been struggling visibly while your family bought new equipment and took vacations." "What vacations?" I asked. "Patricia and Harold went to Florida in October. 3 weeks at some resort. They posted photos on Facebook talking about how their generous daughter was finally allowing them to enjoy retirement." I felt sick. They'd taken a luxury vacation using money meant for Madison while my daughter worked multiple jobs to survive. Mrs. Anderson continued, "And Caroline, your car payments must be substantial. That's a $60,000 vehicle you're driving." I looked toward the driveway where Caroline's SUV was parked. It was a current year luxury model, the kind that required excellent credit and substantial down payment. "Caroline, how did you afford that car?" She shifted uncomfortably. "I got a loan based on family financial support." Family financial support, meaning the money I sent for Madison. Before Carolyn could answer, my phone rang. The caller ID showed Thomas Bradley from First National Bank. "Miss Turner, this is Thomas Bradley from the bank. I understand you're back in town and there's something I need to discuss with you regarding Harold Turner's recent loan applications." I stepped away from Caroline and Mrs. Anderson to take the call privately. "What kind of loan applications, Mr. Bradley?" "Your father attempted to secure a significant loan against what he described as guaranteed monthly military support payments. He used Madison's name as collateral and presented documentation showing regular income from your military service." My stomach dropped. "He used Madison's name as collateral?" "Yes, ma'am. The application was for $45,000 secured against projected future payments. We denied the application because the documentation seemed irregular, but I thought you should be aware of the attempt." After ending the call, I confronted Caroline again. "How many people knew about the money I was sending?" Caroline looked trapped. "It wasn't supposed to be a secret. We just needed some help getting back on our feet after the farm struggled." Getting back on your feet using money meant for Madison while she struggled to afford basic necessities. "Look, Britney, you don't understand how hard it's been. Taking care of Madison, dealing with Mom's demands, trying to help Dad save the farm. We all made sacrifices." "Madison made sacrifices, you made purchases." Caroline suddenly broke down, completely sobbing against the fence post. "I'm pregnant, Britney. I've been using some of the money for doctor appointments and prenatal care because I don't have insurance." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. "You're pregnant?" 3 months. And David doesn't know about the money situation. He thinks I have family support for the baby, and I was planning to ask if Madison could be backup guardian so I could keep getting support payments after the baby comes. The scheme was even more elaborate than I'd imagined. Caroline had been planning to use Madison's custody status to continue accessing support money for her own child. Caroline using military family support money for your pregnancy while Madison goes without food and medical care is unconscionable. "I know," she sobbed, "but Mom convinced me it was temporary just until we could get stable. She said military families are supposed to help each other, and Madison was learning good values through struggle." Mrs. Anderson had been listening from a distance, and now she approached again. "Britney, there's something else you should know. Madison has been coming to my house some evenings just to sit somewhere warm and talk. She's been worried about you overseas, thinking you didn't have money to send support." She thought I was struggling financially. Patricia told her that military pay is very low, and you were probably sending what you could afford, which wasn't much. Madison felt guilty for needing things because she thought it would burden you. The psychological manipulation was the worst part. They'd convinced Madison that her basic needs were unreasonable burdens on her struggling mother, while simultaneously stealing every penny I sent for her care. Caroline wiped her eyes and looked at me desperately. "What are you going to do?" I thought about my options. The theft was clearly documented through banking records. The identity theft involving Madison's credit accounts was a serious crime. The emotional abuse disguised as character building had damaged my daughter's relationship with me and her own self-worth. I'm going to make sure Madison gets justice, and that this never happens to another military family. Caroline's face went white. "Justice, Britney, we're family. Family doesn't steal from children and lie about their mother's love. Family protects each other." As Caroline continued crying, my phone buzzed with a text message from Madison. "Mom, can you come back to the house? There's something else I need to show you." I left Caroline in the barn and walked back toward the farmhouse, my mind racing with plans for ensuring my daughter's future and holding my family accountable for their betrayal. The community was watching, and I realized this case might help other military families recognize and prevent similar situations. Mrs. Anderson walked with me partway, offering support and promising to provide testimony if needed. "Madison is a good girl who deserved better," she said simply. "And you deserve to know that most folks in town suspected something wasn't right." As I approached the house, I could see Madison waiting on the porch with a box in her hands. Whatever she'd discovered would likely reveal even more layers to this betrayal, but I was ready to face the truth and fight for my daughter's future. The hardest part was knowing that the people who should have protected Madison had instead exploited her trust, while convincing her that her mother didn't love her enough to provide support. That psychological damage would take time to heal. But I was committed to rebuilding our relationship on a foundation of honesty and genuine care. Madison met me at the front door holding a cardboard box that I didn't recognize. Her face was pale but determined, and I could see she'd been crying. "Mom, I found these hidden in the attic above my room," she said, setting the box on the kitchen table. Inside were care packages that I'd sent over the past 2 years. Birthday presents, holiday gifts, letters, and boxes of supplies that Madison had never received. Everything was unopened with shipping labels clearly addressed to Madison Turner. "They told me the packages never arrived," Madison whispered. "Caroline said mail to deployed families gets lost frequently." I picked up a birthday present I'd sent 6 months ago, my handwriting clearly visible. "Happy 18th birthday, Madison. I'm so proud of you. Love, Mom." The box was still sealed with the original shipping tape. "Madison, I sent you something for every birthday, every holiday, every special occasion. They've been hiding your gifts and telling you I forgot about you." She opened the birthday box with shaking hands. Inside were the laptop I'd arranged for her college work, new clothes, and her size gift cards for textbooks, and a long letter explaining how proud I was of her academic achievements. "I wrote to you about making the honor roll," Madison said softly. "But when you didn't respond, I thought you were too busy to care about school stuff." "I never received your letters, honey. If I had, I would have moved heaven and earth to congratulate you." We spent the morning going through the hidden packages, while I made phone calls to set legal proceedings in motion. My first call was to Captain Jessica Wright, my military legal advisor, who expedited paperwork for civilian law enforcement to investigate the case. "Britney, this is a clear case of mail theft, identity theft, and financial abuse," Captain Wright explained over speakerphone. "The military family victim element makes this a priority case for both civilian and military justice systems." My second call was to the county prosecutor, Amanda Foster, who agreed to meet with us that afternoon after reviewing the documentation I'd prepared. The systematic nature of this theft, combined with identity theft involving a minor, makes this a felony case. Prosecutor Foster explained during our meeting at her office. We're looking at potential charges, including wire fraud, identity theft, elder abuse of a minor, and conspiracy. Madison provided detailed testimony about the emotional manipulation and financial deprivation she'd experienced. Her strength and maturity during the interview impressed both the prosecutor and the victim advocate present. Madison, I want you to understand that none of this is your fault, Prosecutor Foster said gently. Adult family members had a legal and ethical responsibility to protect your interests, not exploit them. That evening, Patricia made one final attempt to manipulate Madison. I recorded the conversation from the next room as Patricia cornered Madison in the kitchen. Madison, honey, you need to think carefully about talking to outsiders about family business, Patricia began in a sweet tone that I'd never heard her use before. Grandma, they stole money that Mom sent for me. We borrowed money to help the farm that supports all of us. When you cooperate with prosecutors, you're attacking the family that raised you. But I was hungry, Grandma. I was cold. I worked double shifts just to buy basic things while you used my money for vacations. Patricia's tone hardened. Your mother is going to abandon you again, Madison. She'll go back to her military career and leave you with nothing. If you help convict your family, you'll have nobody left. My mother loves me. She was sending money to take care of me. Your mother chose her career over you once, and she'll do it again. We're the ones who were here every day. I entered the kitchen before Madison could respond, my phone still recording. Patricia, this conversation ends now. Patricia straightened up her manipulation mask, slipping completely. This is my house, Britney. You can't tell me what to say. Actually, attempting to intimidate a witness in a criminal case is illegal. You just added obstruction of justice to your charges. Patricia's face went white as she realized her words had been recorded. You're destroying this family over money. I'm protecting my daughter from people who stole her future while lying about her mother's love. The next morning, Christmas morning, Harold and Patricia were arrested at their farmhouse. The sheriff's department arrived just as Patricia was preparing to cook breakfast, and the irony wasn't lost on anyone present. They'd been living comfortably on stolen money while Madison struggled to afford food. Caroline received a criminal summons at her apartment, where officers found evidence of expensive purchases made during the time period when Madison was working multiple jobs to survive. The local newspaper covered the arrests, and the story drew regional attention to the exploitation of military families. I worked with the reporter to ensure Madison's privacy was protected, while highlighting the broader issue of financial abuse targeting deployed service members. Dr. Williams from the clinic called to offer his medical records as evidence of Madison's stress-related health problems caused by financial insecurity. Madison's anxiety attacks were directly related to food insecurity and housing instability, he explained. This was preventable suffering. The bank provided documentation showing the systematic transfer of Madison's support money to personal accounts used for luxury purchases and farm improvements unrelated to her care. The paper trail was comprehensive and undeniable. Madison's strength throughout the legal process amazed everyone involved. She provided clear testimony about the emotional manipulation tactics while maintaining compassion for family members who had betrayed her trust. I understand they were struggling, Madison told the prosecutor. But they made me believe my mother didn't love me, and they made me hungry and cold while they lived comfortably. That's not okay. Captain Wright arranged for military family services to provide Madison with counseling support and temporary financial assistance during the legal proceedings. The military takes care of its own, and Madison was officially recognized as a victim of crimes targeting military families. The forensic accountant Rachel Davis calculated the total theft at $33,600 over 2 years. This didn't include additional identity theft damages or the emotional distress costs that Madison would face rebuilding her credit and her relationship with her family. Community members rallied around Madison, offering employment opportunities and scholarship support that she'd never known existed. The local diner owner, Martha Stevens, revealed she'd suspected Madison's family situation and had been secretly providing extra food and cash bonuses. Madison would eat one small meal during her shift and save half of it for later, Martha explained. I realized she was rationing food, so I started giving her mistakes from the kitchen and extra tips from customers who didn't exist. The community support network that emerged showed how many people had been willing to help Madison if they'd known the truth about her situation. Patricia's lies about my neglect had prevented people from offering direct assistance to Madison while portraying our family as proud military people who didn't need charity. By the end of the week, Harold had decided to cooperate fully with prosecutors in exchange for a reduced sentence. His cooperation would be crucial for understanding the full scope of the scheme and ensuring that other potential victims were identified and protected. The contrast between Madison's previous Christmas, when she'd worked double shifts and slept in unheated rooms, and this Christmas when she was surrounded by community support and legal protection, created a powerful symbol of justice and healing. But I knew the legal proceedings were just the beginning. The real work would be rebuilding Madison's trust in family relationships and helping her understand that the love and support she deserved had always been there, just misdirected by people who should have protected her. As I watched Madison sleep peacefully in a warm bed for the first time in months, I made a promise that her future would be built on honesty, genuine care, and the security she'd always deserved. 3 weeks after the arrests, the local newspaper story was picked up by regional media outlets, and our situation became a symbol of military family exploitation. I carefully managed media requests while protecting Madison's privacy, focusing public attention on the broader issue of financial abuse targeting deployed service members. The media coverage brought an unexpected development. Patricia's sister Dorothy called from California, crying and furious. Britney, I've been sending $200 monthly to Patricia specifically for Madison's school clothes and activities, Dorothy explained during our phone conversation. Patricia told me you weren't able to send much support because military pay is so low. Another layer of theft. Patricia hadn't just been stealing from me. She'd been soliciting and stealing money from other family members while claiming I was neglecting Madison. Aunt Dorothy, I was sending $1,400 monthly plus care packages and gifts. $1,400, Patricia told me you could barely afford $50 a month. I felt so sorry for Madison that I've been sending extra money for 2 years. I calculated quickly. Dorothy's $200 monthly for 2 years added $4,800 to the total theft amount. Madison had been denied nearly $6,000 in additional support from family members who thought they were helping a neglected child. Did Patricia ever send you photos or updates about how the money was being used for Madison? She sent pictures of Madison looking thin and wearing old clothes. Patricia said Madison was too proud to accept help, but really needed support for school activities and better nutrition. The manipulation was even more sophisticated than I'd realized. Patricia had been deliberately keeping Madison looking poor and malnourished to solicit sympathy money from extended family while spending the funds on luxuries for herself. Dorothy drove from California to Nebraska to meet with prosecutors and provide additional evidence. When she saw Madison in person, healthy and well-dressed for the first time in years, she broke down crying. Honey, I thought you were struggling because your mother couldn't afford to support you properly. Patricia showed me pictures of you looking so thin and sad. Madison hugged her great-aunt warmly. I was thin and sad, Aunt Dorothy, but not because Mom couldn't support me. I was suffering because Grandma Patricia and the others were stealing the support money Mom sent. The prosecution team expanded their investigation to include mail fraud and interstate fraud charges based on Dorothy's evidence. Patricia had been using Madison's suffering to commit fraud across state lines, making the case eligible for federal prosecution. Meanwhile, Caroline appeared in court for her initial hearing. She'd retained a lawyer and entered a guilty plea to avoid trial, agreeing to pay full restitution and perform community service. Her cooperation provided additional evidence against Harold and Patricia, who faced more serious charges for orchestrating the scheme. Caroline admitted that Patricia planned the entire operation, Prosecutor Foster explained during our meeting. Patricia researched military family support systems and deliberately chose to target children of deployed service members because they're vulnerable and the parents are difficult to contact. The premeditation was chilling. This wasn't desperate people making poor choices in crisis. It was calculated predators targeting military families for systematic exploitation. Caroline's testimony revealed that Patricia had been studying online military family support groups, identifying potential targets, and learning about deployment schedules and support payment systems. She'd planned to expand the scheme nationally before I discovered Madison's situation. The federal investigation that followed identified 3 other military families who had similar experiences with trusted family members stealing support money while convincing children their parents weren't sending financial support. Detective Maria Rodriguez from the Federal Task Force met with Madison and me to discuss the broader implications. Madison's case helped us identify a pattern of exploitation targeting military children. Your willingness to pursue prosecution may have saved other families from similar suffering. Madison decided to meet with the other victims, all teenagers whose deployed parents had been sending support money that never reached them. The shared experiences created a powerful support network while revealing the calculated nature of these crimes. They all used the same tactics, Madison observed after the meeting, convincing us that military parents don't send money because soldiers' kids are supposed to be tough and independent. The psychological manipulation was consistent across all cases stealing support money, while convincing children their parents didn't love them enough to provide financial care. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, the counselor provided by Military Family Services, worked with Madison to process the emotional abuse disguised as character building. Madison, you survived systematic manipulation designed to make you believe you weren't worthy of care and support. Community support for Madison continued growing. The local college offered her a full scholarship, and several businesses provided part-time employment opportunities that respected her academic schedule. Martha Stevens from the diner organized a community fundraising dinner for all the military family victims, raising enough money to establish a scholarship fund supporting children of deployed service members. Madison's strength inspired all of us, Martha announced at the dinner. No military family should face this kind of exploitation while serving our country. Harold's court date approached, and his lawyer indicated he would plead guilty and cooperate fully with federal investigations. His cooperation was crucial for understanding how Patricia had planned to expand the scheme and identifying additional potential victims. The bank provided detailed documentation showing how Patricia had researched military family banking patterns and specifically chosen targets based on deployment lengths and support payment amounts. The scheme was far more sophisticated than random family theft. Madison's credit report showed the full extent of identity theft damage, $7,000 in credit card debt, plus attempts to open additional accounts and loans using her name and social security number. The credit repair process would take years, but Madison was determined to rebuild her financial future honestly. I learned a lot about financial responsibility through this experience, Madison told her counselor. Not the way they intended, but I understand now how important it is to protect your credit, and monitor your accounts. The federal sentencing guidelines for Patricia's charges included significant prison time due to the military family targeting aspect and the interstate fraud elements. The justice system was taking these crimes seriously as a threat to military family welfare. As the legal proceedings continued, Madison maintained her strength and compassion, while accepting that justice was necessary to protect other families. Her maturity and resilience amazed everyone involved in the case, from prosecutors to counselors to community members. The most satisfying moment came when Madison received her college acceptance letter with full scholarship support. She'd achieved academically despite years of systematic sabotage, and her future was finally secure through honest support systems rather than stolen money. "Mom, I want other military kids to know they deserve support and love," Madison told me as we celebrated her college acceptance. "Nobody should suffer the way I did while believing their parents don't care." Her commitment to helping other military families showed how she'd transformed her painful experience into motivation for positive change. The girl who had been convinced she was unworthy of support was now advocating for military children's rights and protection. 3 months after Patricia's sentencing to federal prison, Madison and I had moved into a small apartment near the military base where I'd been transferred to family services duty. We were finally building the honest relationship I'd always wanted when there was a knock at our door on a quiet Tuesday evening. Through the peephole, I could see 2 federal agents with badges visible on their jackets. My heart raced as I opened the door, worried there might be complications with our case. "Miss Turner, I'm Detective Maria Rodriguez with the FBI Task Force on Military Family Exploitation. May we come in?" Madison appeared beside me, her face concerned, but no longer fearful. The past months of counseling and legal support had helped her develop confidence in facing difficult situations. "Is there a problem with our case?" I asked as we settled in the living room. Detective Rodriguez opened a thick folder. "Actually, your case helped us uncover something much larger. Patricia's scheme wasn't limited to individual family theft. We've discovered she was operating as part of a network targeting military families across multiple states." The implications hit me immediately. "How many families?" "We've identified 17 families so far, with more cases under investigation." Patricia had detailed files on military deployment schedules, family compositions, and financial support systems. This was organized crime disguised as family support. Madison leaned forward, interested, despite the disturbing subject matter. "Detective Rodriguez, were there other kids my age who went through the same thing?" "Yes, Madison. Your willingness to testify and cooperate has helped us identify other victims. Some cases involve military children who are still suffering while thinking their deployed parents don't care enough to send support." Detective Rodriguez spread photos across our coffee table showing documents seized from Patricia's house. The organization was sophisticated charts, tracking deployment schedules, copies of military family support group communications, and detailed notes about psychological manipulation tactics. Patricia studied military family vulnerability points, the detective explained. She knew exactly when families would be most isolated and which children would be easiest to manipulate. One file made my blood run cold. It contained detailed notes about Madison's personality, academic achievements, and psychological profile. Patricia had been studying my daughter like a predator studies prey. She wrote that Madison was ideal because she's intelligent enough to work and contribute income, but emotionally sensitive enough to believe lies about her mother's priorities. I read aloud from Patricia's notes. Madison took the file and read quietly for a moment. "Mom, she wrote down things I said during my anxiety attacks. She was using my private emotional pain to figure out how to manipulate me better." The calculated cruelty was overwhelming. Patricia hadn't just been stealing money. She'd been deliberately traumatizing Madison for more effective psychological control. Detective Rodriguez continued, Harold's cooperation helped us understand the recruitment process. Patricia targeted rural communities with strong military traditions, where extended family often help with childcare during deployments. How did she find these families? Online military support groups, church networks, veterans organizations. She'd identify vulnerable situations and volunteer to help, gradually gaining trust until she could access financial information. The scope was staggering. Patricia had turned military family support into a hunting ground for financial predators. Madison asked, "Are the other kids okay now?" Most cases are still in progress. Some children are just learning that their parents were sending support that never reached them. Your case provided the roadmap for prosecuting these crimes and connecting with other victims. Detective Rodriguez handed me another folder. We'd like Madison to participate in a federal victim impact program. Her testimony could help prosecutors explain the psychological damage these crimes cause, beyond just financial theft. Madison didn't hesitate. If it helps other military kids understand their parents really do love them, I'll do whatever you need. Her strength continued to amaze me. She'd transformed her painful experience into determination to protect other families. There's one more thing, Detective Rodriguez said. Patricia's scheme was connected to a larger network that specifically targets military families. The federal investigation has uncovered fraudulent guardianship arrangements, stolen benefits, and identity theft operations across 12 states. The revelation that our family's betrayal was part of a national military family exploitation network was both terrifying and validating. Madison's suffering hadn't been random family dysfunction. It had been systematic victimization by organized criminals. Detective, how many children are we talking about? Currently 47 confirmed cases with more under investigation. The total financial theft exceeds $2 million, but the psychological damage is immeasurable. Madison spoke up again. I want to meet the other kids. They shouldn't feel alone the way I did. Detective Rodriguez smiled warmly. That's exactly what we were hoping you'd say. The Victim Advocate Program includes peer support groups for military children who've experienced family exploitation. Over the following weeks, Madison became an unofficial leader among the military family victims. Her combination of survival experience and emotional healing inspired other teenagers who were just beginning to understand that their parents hadn't abandoned them. The federal case expanded to include racketeering charges against the network organizers. Patricia's cooperation in exchange for a reduced sentence provided information that led to arrests across multiple states. Madison, your courage in pursuing justice may have saved dozens of other military families from years of suffering, Detective Rodriguez explained during one of our follow-up meetings. The personal letters Madison received from other military children showed the impact of her advocacy. Thank you for helping me understand that my dad was sending money for me. I thought he forgot about me when he deployed, but now I know someone was stealing his letters and support payments. Because of your case, my mom found out that my grandparents were lying about her not caring. We're finally talking honestly for the first time in 2 years. I was working 3 jobs thinking my family needed money, but they were spending support payments on themselves. Your story helped me realize I deserved better. Each letter reinforced that Madison's decision to seek justice had rippled across the country, healing relationships between military parents and their children. The federal sentencing phase brought closure to our case while opening doors for Madison's advocacy work. Patricia received 8 years in federal prison for organizing criminal exploitation of military families. Harold's cooperation and genuine remorse earned him probation with community service requirements. Caroline completed her community service and restitution payments while successfully managing her new responsibilities as a mother. Her transformation seemed genuine, though rebuilding trust would take time. Most importantly, Madison received notification that her transfer to her preferred university had been approved with full military family scholarship support. Her academic achievements, despite years of sabotage, had impressed admissions committees, and her advocacy work added strength to her applications. "Mom, I want to study social work and law so I can help protect other military families," Madison announced as we celebrated her university acceptance. Her career goals reflected the maturity and purpose she'd gained through surviving and overcoming systematic exploitation. The teenager who had been convinced she was unworthy of support was now dedicating her future to protecting other vulnerable children. The knock at our door that had initially worried us had brought opportunities for Madison to expand her impact and help military families across the country. Justice had served healing, but more importantly, it had empowered Madison to transform her painful experience into protection for others. 6 months later, I stood in the audience at Madison's high school graduation, watching my daughter deliver the valedictorian speech to a crowd that knew her story of resilience. The teenager who had once believed her mother didn't care enough to provide support was now inspiring an entire community with her message of healing and justice. This year taught me that family love requires honesty, accountability, and genuine care. Madison spoke confidently into the microphone. "When people truly love you, they protect your interests instead of exploiting them." The applause was thunderous. Madison had become a symbol of strength for military families throughout our region, and her academic achievements, despite years of systematic sabotage, inspired everyone who knew her story. After the ceremony, we drove to our permanent home near the base, where I'd been promoted to head the Military Family Protection Services program. My new position involved developing safeguards to prevent the kind of exploitation Madison had suffered, using our experience to create systemic protections for deployed service members' children. Madison's room was filled with college acceptance letters, scholarship awards, and thank you notes from military families across the country. The Federal Victim Impact Program had connected her with hundreds of families who found healing through understanding they weren't alone in their experiences. "Mom, look at this," Madison said, showing me a letter from a military father in Texas. His daughter was working 16-hour days thinking he couldn't afford to support her, but family members were stealing his support payments and telling her that military parents don't send money home. The letter described a situation nearly identical to ours: trusted family members stealing support money while convincing children their deployed parents didn't love them enough to provide financial care. Madison's testimony had helped prosecutors build cases across multiple states. Caroline arrived for dinner that evening carrying her 6-month-old son and looking genuinely transformed by motherhood and accountability. Her restitution payments were current, and she'd found stable employment while completing parenting classes required by her probation agreement. "Madison, I brought the letters you asked about," Caroline said, handing over a small box. Inside were letters I'd written to Caroline over the years, asking about Madison's well-being and expressing my love and concern for my daughter. Caroline had hidden these letters along with my financial support, using my absence to claim I didn't care about family relationships. "I want you to read these, Madison," Caroline said quietly. "Your mom never stopped worrying about you or trying to stay connected. I was wrong to hide her letters and make you think she was too busy to care." Madison read through the letters, many of which expressed concerns that proved prophetic. I'd worried about Madison's nutrition, academic stress, and social development, asking Caroline to ensure my daughter knew she was loved and supported. "Mom, you asked Caroline to make sure I knew you missed me and were proud of my school achievements," Madison said, tears in her eyes. "If I'd received these letters, I would never have believed you didn't care." The evening provided closure for our family relationships while acknowledging the work still needed for complete healing. Caroline's genuine remorse and consistent follow-through on her legal requirements showed authentic change, but trust would rebuild slowly through actions rather than words. Harold joined us for dessert, bringing vegetables from the garden he'd planted as part of his community service requirements. His work with rural community education programs helped prevent other families from falling victim to similar exploitation schemes. Madison, the presentation you helped create, has been shown to 47 communities across 3 states, Harold reported. Family members are learning to recognize financial exploitation and manipulation tactics that target military children. Madison's advocacy work had grown into a comprehensive education program that helped extended family members understand their responsibilities to support rather than exploit military children during parental deployments. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, Madison's counselor, stopped by to deliver Madison's final therapy evaluation and discuss transition support for college. Madison has achieved remarkable healing while maintaining appropriate boundaries with family members who betrayed her trust. The most impressive aspect of Madison's recovery is her ability to seek justice without becoming consumed by anger, Dr. Mitchell explained. She's transformed trauma into purposeful advocacy while preserving her capacity for healthy relationships. As the evening concluded, Madison showed me her college dorm room planning materials and course selection for her double major in social work and pre-law. Her academic advisor had helped design a program specifically focused on military family advocacy and child protection law. Mom, I want to create legal protections so no military child has to wonder whether their deployed parent loves them enough to send support, Madison explained excitedly. The psychological damage from these lies is as harmful as the financial theft. Her career goals reflected deep understanding of both legal and emotional aspects of military family exploitation. Madison's personal experience would strengthen her professional advocacy for system-level protections. The federal task force had invited Madison to serve on their advisory panel for military family protection policies. Her input would help develop better oversight systems for children in civilian care during parental deployments. Detective Rodriguez called that evening with final updates on the national investigation. Madison's case led to 63 arrests and recovery of over $3 million in stolen military family support funds. More importantly, hundreds of children now understand their deployed parents never stopped loving and supporting them. The systemic impact of seeking justice for Madison's suffering had protected countless other military families while strengthening support systems nationwide. As Madison prepared for bed in her secure, warm bedroom, she showed me her gratitude journal that Dr. Mitchell had encouraged her to maintain. Recent entries reflected her transformed perspective. Grateful that Mom's love was always real even when I couldn't see it. Thankful for the community that supported us through legal proceedings. Proud that our justice helped other military kids understand they deserve care and support. The final entry was dated that evening. Excited to use my education to protect military families and prevent other children from suffering the way I did. Madison's healing journey had transformed her from a victim of systematic exploitation into a powerful advocate for military family protection. Her strength, compassion, and determination to help others showed the person she'd always been underneath the lies and manipulation she'd endured. Before turning off the lights, Madison asked, "Mom, do you think the military families we helped would want to stay in touch as I go through college?" Madison, you've created a network of people who care about each other because of shared experience and mutual support. Those relationships will strengthen as you continue growing. Her question reflected understanding that healing happens through community and ongoing connection rather than individual achievement alone. As I tucked my daughter into her secure bed, I reflected on the journey that had brought us from Christmas morning betrayal to graduation day triumph. Justice had been served through legal accountability, financial restitution, and systemic protections for other military families. More importantly, Madison had reclaimed her understanding of love support and family relationships. She knew now that true family members protect each other's interests rather than exploiting vulnerability for personal gain. The knock at our door that had initially terrified us had opened opportunities for Madison to impact military family protection nationally. Her painful experience had been transformed into purpose that would prevent other children from suffering similar exploitation. Looking back, I realized that our story demonstrated an important truth. When military families face betrayal from trusted people, seeking justice serves healing not just for individual families, but for the entire military community. Madison's resilience, combined with comprehensive legal accountability and community support, had created a model for protecting military children during parental deployments while strengthening family relationships based on honesty and genuine care. Our Christmas shock had become a graduation celebration. Our family betrayal had become national military family protection, and Madison's suffering had become strength that would protect countless other children. The ending was truly happy, not because everything returned to how it was before, but because Madison had grown into an even stronger person while our relationship had been rebuilt on a foundation of complete honesty and mutual respect. And as Madison drifted off to sleep, I made a promise that her future would continue being built on the love and support she'd always deserved finally delivered, without lies, manipulation, or exploitation from people who should have protected her interests from the beginning. Justice had been served, healing had occurred, and Madison's bright future was secured through honest support systems and her own remarkable strength. Have you ever experienced a situation where family members you trusted betrayed that trust? How did you find the strength to seek justice while maintaining your capacity for healing and forgiveness? I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Thank you for listening to Madison's story of resilience and justice. If this story touched your heart or reminded you of the importance of protecting military families, please like this video, subscribe to hear more stories of courage and healing, and share this with others who might benefit from understanding that justice can serve healing when combined with genuine support and community care. Remember, every military family deserves honesty, protection, and genuine support, rather than exploitation disguised as care. Madison's strength shows us that seeking justice isn't about revenge, but about protecting others from similar suffering, while rebuilding relationships on foundations of truth and authentic love.